Hello everybody, my name is Dr. Thomas Hughes. I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist here in Southern California. Welcome back to my recap and synopsis of Love is Blind Season 4. Today we're going to talk about two connected love triangles and see if there's something that we can learn from it. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. There are two very important people, or at least important people for these two connected triangles that I mentioned, okay? The important people are Kwame and Micah. Now, when they first meet each other, they like each other and they hit it off, and that's all well and good. But of course, there are other people vying for their affection. You know, once you take a step back and really look at it, this is very much so like a dating app. Now, it wasn't supposed to be. I think the producers and the creators of the show very much so intended to remove the dating app-like feel from the show and from the contestants, because you pretty much remove that visual aspect that you would see when you're swiping for people on an app. But people are people, and as much as you try to control their environments, people are going to want the best possible partner for themselves. And it makes sense, it's natural, it's normal, it's what people do. But what I think is interesting out of examining these connected triangles is what happens when the person that you want actually wanted someone else first. So let me set up these triangles, all right? Kwame likes Micah and Chelsea, but Kwame likes Micah more. Micah likes Paul and Kwame, but Micah likes Paul more. And Paul also has some interest in Amber. Now, Amber doesn't really make much of a splash in the show. She's there as a potential suitor for Paul in the beginning, and then you don't really see her except for maybe one other time at a group gathering. They didn't really, again, there wasn't much of a splash there. I think the pivotal point when Paul made the decision not to pursue Amber further was that conversation that they had about Amber's 2 divorces, and also her comments about infidelity.
You ever cheated on a spouse, or would you?
I'd like to think that I wouldn't, but I think that it would have led down to that road just because I wasn't happy.
Kind of a red flag.
Wait, you think that's a red flag with me?
A little bit.
That was in the past. Like, if you're asking me now, like, hell no.
I think in Paul's head, he started to factor in the possibility that he might be the 3rd divorce, and also the possibility that if things go south with them, that there was the comment that she made about infidelity made him kind of leery and kind of concerned. So he eliminated her after that, which I think is fair. You know, some people might look past it and other people might think of it as a cause for concern. So I say this is like a dating app because, like with dating apps, you're dating multiple people at once, you're seeing multiple people at once, or matching with multiple people at once. And even if you make a connection with those people, you then meet someone else who you also develop a connection with, but now you've distracted yourself from that initial person. People are constantly being shifted in and out of first place, and then sometimes in and out of second and third place. It's really just a distracting way to date, and that's kind of what happened in this situation in particular. The good thing is that they're in the pods, and they're in many ways forced to make a decision about who they're gonna go with. Whereas out in the real world, the possibilities are endless. You know, you can just keep swiping and keep meeting new people and keep getting distracted, and again, keep shifting people in and out of first place. But in the pods though, most people, I think all of them, didn't really have more than 1 or 2 options that they could choose from, which again eliminated the distraction that one would have when you're trying to make a meaningful connection with someone. So that was a good thing. The drawbacks to being in the pods is that when someone was interested in pursuing marriage with someone and they got rejected, everyone knew about it, all right? I am positive that Chelsea was aware of Kwame wanting to marry Micah before wanting to marry her, because, well, Micah wasn't exactly secretive about how the conversation went which again is very different from what you might expect to find in the real world or even on dating apps. I mean, you very well might be someone else's number 2 choice or number 5 choice. Or if you're in Los Angeles, somewhere between number 10 and number 20, like it can happen. But you don't know about it. You don't know about it unless you ask. But in the pods, everyone knows. And now that person that is, I guess, the number 2 has to make a decision about whether or not they're okay, knowing that the person that they're interested in was interested in someone else. I want to applaud Chelsea because I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's a very secure individual, stable individual. Seems like she got a pretty good head on her shoulders, knows what she wants, and doesn't really take or stand for much BS. And I can really appreciate that in somebody. So it takes that type of person to know that you're number 2 and still be interested in a relationship with someone. Now, I say that, and I want to make this point very clear. This is one of the big take-home points that I want out of this. And that just because it takes a very secure person to be able to deal with that situation, being someone's number 2, doesn't mean that someone that doesn't want to be someone else's number 2 is insecure. It is perfectly reasonable to say, I don't want to be someone else's number 2. You know why? Exactly what happened at the pool party and a few other instances with Kwame and Micah. Like, who wants to deal with that? Who wants to deal with knowing that the person you're in love with, the person you're interested in being in a relationship with, is only there because they couldn't get someone else? And also, they're still harboring feelings for them. They're still thinking about them. Even when you're with them, they're thinking about someone else. That's a lot for anyone to deal with. And again, it takes us a very secure person to be able to deal with that, but just because someone doesn't want to deal with that, that doesn't mean that they're insecure. In fact, you could almost make an argument that they might be a very secure person if they're able to be real with themselves about that and walk away from it, versus putting themselves in a situation where they're constantly being mentally tormented and paranoid about what's going on in the head of their partner. There's an argument to be made for them to actually be secure in making that decision. So I think success, at least in this situation, is dependent upon 2 things. That is respect and boundaries. So the boundaries come into play when you talk about texting and DMing this person on Instagram and, having long and lengthy conversations with someone that you were once in love with, because it invites distractions from the person that you're actually with. I'm not saying it's guaranteed that's what would happen, but it certainly would be a distraction. And if the other person knew that you were talking to that person that you were initially in love with, again, it takes a very secure person to deal with that, but even the most secure person might have an issue with it. The respect part came into play when Kwame was at the pool party and having that long, lengthy conversation with Micah right in front of Chelsea. Again, I'm not saying that it's okay to have that long and lengthy conversation without Chelsea around, but to do it right in her face, tough to watch. Tough to watch. Ill-advised, I would say. Even if he was interested in closure, it's tough to watch and ill-advised. And Chelsea actually confronted him later on, I believe that night, about that situation.
Why did you have to talk to her like that exact moment?
There's no concept in that moment to be like, hey, let me calm down.
When you have a fiance and when you have somebody that you love, that you care about, yeah, there is a concept of that now.
But like, if that ever happens, like, you have to know that there's serious reason and intent behind what I'm doing.
No.
I want to applaud Chelsea. It doesn't really take or stand for much BS, and I can really appreciate that in somebody.
We had no closure. Closure is good. Closure is a good thing. Closure is a great thing, baby.
Did you feel like you got closure tonight with her?
Not fully, but enough.
Oh my God.
Baby.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Again, I get the fact that you needed closure. But Chelsea was right there. Like, she can see you, dog. She can see you. I mean, I think we've all been there where we want to be honest, we want to be upfront and truthful, but we just say the wrong thing, you know? And we could have worded it differently and got the same point across, just saying something differently. See, you really have to think about the message that you're trying to convey and making sure that that's taken in and not something else in your quest to be as upfront and honest and truthful, because some things just shouldn't be said. This situation, this sequence of events reminds me of season 3 with Cole and Z, where he also started talking to and maybe even flirting with someone that didn't work out for him. And then later he has to answer questions about it and he just says the wrong, the wrong thing. It's very similar to me. Okay, so it's kind of hard to think of a take home from this because it just boils down to just thinking before you speak. It's just hard to do when you're in the moment. It's just like, don't bring something up if it's inconsequential and it's just gonna cause more conflict between the two of you. I think the overall point of what he was trying to say was he's no longer interested in Micah. I think that was the point. But when he said, I still didn't get full closure from her, now Chelsea has to think about, okay, so you're still not done with her. Now, he might have meant that he was done with her and is no longer going to interact with her, but that's not the message that he conveyed. And like I said, we've all been there. It's just one of those things where you really have to stop for a second and think before you speak when you're having a difficult conversation like this. But they did get married. And I think the reason they were able to get to that point is because, and I could be wrong about this because I don't know what happened off camera, obviously, but it didn't seem like Micah was in the picture outside of those group events that they had. You know, Micah was just out of sight and out of mind, and the two of them, Chelsea and Kwame, were just left to having to deal with the normal things that you might expect out of two people that are about to get married. So Kwame's mom did not want to go to the wedding because Chelsea is not Ghanaian. There was also some concern about who would move in with who because they lived in 2 different cities. All of that stuff is normal, expected stuff to have to deal with. And I think, again, they got to that point because the distraction of another person, another option was removed. Which again speaks to what I typically tell people, and that when you meet somebody and they're a viable option for you, stop swiping. Stop looking at other options. Just focus on that one person and allow yourself to make a connection with the person that is an actual option for you. Because if you don't, your mind's just gonna be all over the place. So let's shift gears to Micah and Paul, who I think made a brilliant chess move when they made the decision to just pair up. I mean, it was simply a matter of, I like you, do you like me? They both said yes, and they went forward with the engagement. They made a business decision that looked good on paper, and they went forward with the relationship. Well, it really stood out to me what happened when Micah turned it around and asked Paul if he was interested in marrying her. So she knew maybe in the back of her head that it was a possibility that he didn't. And that sort of speaks to that phrase that I hear all the time, and that men control access to relationships, women control access to sex. Because if you look at the interview that she did, she mentioned very, very clearly that had Paul wanted to marry her, she absolutely would have said yes. I don't know what went wrong in the relationship. I think Paul mentioned something about them being guarded and not fully engaged in the relationship or the engagement. I don't really know what that means. And I don't really need the specifics. It's just an example of how people on paper sometimes seem like they're a good match for each other, but in real life, it just doesn't work out. And that's okay too. People are okay with changing their mind, and you just got to tell the other person. It'll hurt both the person that's being told they're not wanted, and also it's kind of hard to be the person to tell someone else that you're not interested. It sucks for both parties, but that's normal and it happens. The main thing to do is just dust yourself off and get back on that horse and try to find someone that works for you. One thing that I noticed, okay, that stood out to me, and I don't know if this speaks towards the lack of connection that the two of them had, is that scene where they're at the pool and Kwame's talking to Micah, Micah's talking to Kwame, and you can see, or they at least show Chelsea, you know, she's pissed off about it. She's hurt by it, but you don't see Paul. Where was Paul during this entire interaction?
Shut out.
Disrespectful to the person that she decided to commit to as well.
Who's her person
So
again?
like, I don't know, but he where is he?
Was it Paul?
Where the fuck is he?
I don't know if that is a sign that we missed, that there was a lack of connection or a lack of caring for Micah, from Paul's direction towards Micah, but it's just something I noticed. Maybe you did too. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you for tuning in. That is my recap and synopsis. If there was something out of these two love triangles that you didn't pick up on, feel free to put it in the comments section. I'd love to read about it because, again, I think that Love is Blind is a good way for us to look at some of these interactions and maybe apply to either, you know, ourselves personally or maybe even to a friend, and maybe we can all learn from it in some way, shape, or form. That's all I got. Take care. Bye-bye.